So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to night 3 of the Office 365 training. Well, night 1 for you, night 3 for me. So what I want to do is tonight, again, the whole point of tonight is to take you through the Office 365 environment, sort of introduce you to the tools. But before we do that, I want to have a little, one PowerPoint slide which just talks about collaboration. Because while I've been doing these presentations, there's a lot of questions about where does Office 365 fit in, and now that I have 2 email accounts, what do I use which one for? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time and talk about collaboration broadly. Then we'll get into the BYOD page. Then we'll talk directly about Office 365 and go through all of the pillars of the Office 365 environment. So without further ado, just a couple words on collaboration. Now again, I don't propose to be a math teacher, so this is probably the most complicated Venn diagram you're ever going to see coming from me. This is the Venn diagram that talks about collaboration. So, we've got 3 different audiences in Peel. You've got administrators, you've got teachers, and you've got students. And this Venn diagram pretty well does a good description of exactly what the collaboration types there are in Peel. The first type of collaboration traditionally happens between administrators and teachers, and a separate type of collaboration really happens between teachers and students. And up until now, we've only really had an area in our corporate SharePoint environment where we've been able to do the administrator-teacher collaboration, and we really haven't done any teacher-student collaboration with any board-supported product anyway. Some examples of this type of collaboration across the 2 different environments. Administrator-teacher collaboration would include things like the transformational practices or growing success or PD toolkit, all done from the corporate side, and also employee workflow. But when we start moving into the other area, Office 365, we start talking about collaboration between teachers and students, things like class blogs, class wikis, teacher discussion groups, and student blogs as well. And you can see there's really a difference between the intranet, which is our corporate side, where that administrator-teacher collaboration happens, and the new tool I'll be introducing tonight, Office 365, which is where we're hoping a lot of the teacher-student collaboration takes place. So everything I'll be talking about tonight really talks about the 2 circles on the right-hand side, that teacher-student collaboration. So that's it for the PowerPoint. Now I'm going to talk about Office 365 and the BYOD page. The next question we get a lot is, how do I actually access the BYOD page? Any student who brings in a wireless device and connects to one of our wireless access points gets automatically directed to the BYOD page. So for a student bringing in technology, relatively straightforward to get to the BYOD page. They connect to an access point. They're automatically redirected there. A little more difficult for a staff member to get there, so we've placed icons in 3 different places. The first place you can find it is on your My Site. All the way down the bottom of your My Site, under Peel Links, we have a link called BYOD. That will take you there. We've also placed the link on the information page for all of the schools, so you can find the page there. And also on all of the school websites, we've also got a link to the BYOD page as well. So there's 3 different places where you can actually launch into the BYOD page. The very first time you click on the BYOD page, you will be asked for credentials. For teachers, that's your P number. For students, it's their student number. And your password is the same password you use for email. And then you click Sign In. So I do also want to spend a little bit of time talking about the BYOD page as well, because we've done a lot of heavy lifting on the BYOD page to basically take all of the web applications that you as a teacher and students use and put them in one very convenient place. And we've also automatically signed you on to all of these resources. So when you click on a link, you don't have to provide your credentials again. We've done all that authentication sign-on for you. So just really briefly, I want to go across the different buttons and talk about, in very generic terms, I guess. The first button is My Class. Just a quick show of hands in this room. How many people are currently using My Class? OK, a couple of you. My Class will be retired at the end of this school year. It is running on an old version of SharePoint. It runs on SharePoint 2007. It's been a fabulous workhorse for us now for about 8 years, but it has sort of seen its run. SharePoint 2007 will become unsupported at some point next year, so we definitely need to move off of it. The transition plan is to move My Class obviously onto Office 365, which is why both platforms are available this year. If you are a user of My Class, please don't worry. It will be up for the entire school year, and we'll continue to support it this school year. And we will have a very, very comprehensive transition plan for those individuals who are leveraging My Class to move you into Office 365. For those of you who aren't using my class and want to give Office 365 a go for this year, obviously that's why you're here, and you'll certainly be able to do that after today's presentation. The next button is Learn 360. Teachers have had access to Learn 360 for some time now, and when you log on to Learn 360, you get your own Learn 360 account. The introduction of the BYOD page is the very first time that students have had their own Learn 360 account. So if a student logs onto the BYOD page and clicks on the Learn 360 button, they actually get logged onto their account for Learn 360. And Learn 360, if you haven't seen it before, is basically a video repository, a whole bunch of educational resources and videos. So students can then go in, they can select their videos, they can bookmark them, and do that sort of thing. My Files is a very, very exciting button for some people because we've been promising this for years, and now we're finally delivering it with the BYOD page. What My Files allows teachers and students to do is get access to their G drives from home. Now, before you get too excited about that, only those schools that have been converted to the new CMS system this works for right now. So as your school gets converted to the new Active Directory classroom management system, you too will have access to your G drives from home through the My Files button. And basically it gives you access to not only your G drive, but also the student in-out folder. So if you use that today, that will be available to you from home. The buttons I'll be spending most of the time today talking about are these two, Office 365 and My Blog. I'll skip them for now until we've done with this page, and then we'll delve really, really deep into those. The last button of the large buttons, for elementary students, they'll see a D2L button, which stands for Desire to Learn, and secondary teachers and students will see an Angel button. Desire to Learn, or D2L, and Angel are our two learning management systems in Peel. Secondary uses Angel, elementary uses D2L. If students or teachers have an account in either of these systems and they click this button, it will automatically log them into their account. So, excuse me, again, we've done all that heavy lifting as far as authentication goes. The last 5 buttons at the bottom are basically buttons that we thought would give students great value add. There's a Twitter button, there's a YouTube button, which takes them to the Peel District School Board's YouTube channel. There's an OERB button, the Ontario Educational Resource Bank, and again, we single sign people onto that. So if you're a teacher, you get access to the OERB teachers section. If you're a student, you get access to the OERB student section. We've given you a link to the library e-resources section, and of course, the most popular search engine on the internet, Google. So without further ado, I do want to click on the Office 365 button and get started. So for those of you following along tonight that actually want to follow along and do what I'm doing, if this is the very first time you've clicked on Office 365, you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage because the very first time you click on Office 365, it does take anywhere between an hour and 24 hours for your account to be activated completely. So if you haven't already logged onto the system, you do have to wait a little bit of time for your account to originally be provisioned. So sort of a note for teachers, if you're doing this with your class, the very first day you take your class to the environment is not going to be the day you can probably use the tools. So schedule that. Have your students click the tool, and then the next day you can start using the Office 365 tool. The very first time you click on Newsfeed, it'll say, we're setting it up. There's a nice little message that says, please wait while we provision your account. And your account, again, won't work for anywhere between 1 hour and 24 hours, depending on how busy the services are. So when you actually click on the Office 365 button for the first time, you do get to the welcome screen. The welcome screen is basically a place where we can post upcoming events and coming soon. And you can see we've used it here to talk about the training sessions, obviously, and the things that we've released recently in the environment. During this training session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from left to right across the various buttons in the Office 365 environment. Number one, because, well, it makes sense to go left to right. And number two is because things get a lot more exciting as we move from left to right. And I get a lot more animated, and my arms start doing this, and it's fantastic. So we're going to start off with Outlook. Pretty exciting in and of itself. Office 365 does give every teacher and student in Peel an email address. And again, we haven't done this for students in Peel in about 9 years. So ridiculously exciting just by the fact that now every single student in Peel has a Peel email address which they can use to communicate. For teachers who previously wanted to leverage Web 2.0 tools that weren't inside the environment, such as KidBlog and EduBlog and Prezi and all those other wonderful Web 2.0 tools, oftentimes teachers needed to have a class set of email addresses. And students would have to go off and register with Google or Ymail or Gmail or whatever accounts they have. Now with Office 365, the teacher actually has a class set of email addresses, so if a teacher wants to register a group of students in an external program, they can certainly do that. So I'll talk a little bit about student email addresses. The student email address externally in Office 365 is their student number at pdsb.org. Now, all of you as teachers or any Office 365 user also has a secondary email account. So on the corporate side, I'm known as neil.larson@plsb.com. So our formula for the corporate side is first name dot last name at plsb.com. On the Office 365 side, you're known as your P number at pdsb.org. Now, I also get a lot of questions with, oh my goodness, my P number is being used, isn't it a secret number? The answer is no. Your P number is not a secret number. It is simply used to identify you uniquely as a Peel Board employee. And currently, we leverage it as a username in a lot of our systems, and it's in clear text all over the place. So it's not a secret number, don't worry. We don't overtly display it in the Office 365 environment, because you can see up in the top right-hand corner of the screen, in Office 365, even though my email address is p0033485@pdsb.org, my display name is Mr. Larson-LTSS. So I'll talk about display name for a bit. A teacher's display name in Office 365 is their salutation, either Mr. or Miss, followed by their last name, followed by a dash, and their primary school location. So again, Jim Cash is Mr. Cash-CSIS. I'm Mr. Larson-LTSS. Again, if there's a teacher at Streetsville named John Smith, he'd be Mr. Smith-Streetsville Secondary School. So we've done that very, very purposefully because, again, we know teachers don't necessarily want students to know their first name, which, again, is why we've provisioned separate accounts in Office 365, and it's not your corporate account. So a little more on that before we continue. Teachers often ask me, if I want to email someone, what account do I use? And basically, my answer is, if it's a corporate communication, use your corporate account. If you're emailing someone externally to Peel, which is business related, or you're emailing your administrator, or you're emailing someone within the board office, use your plsb.com account. If you're emailing your students for the purpose of collaboration in this environment, use this account. So really, the only time you'd be using your Office 365 email account is for internal communication for collaboration with the students in your class and your students in the rest of the environment. The other thing we're really proud of within the environment is we've also created distribution lists for every single course taught in secondary and every single home form taught in elementary. And I want to show that really quickly. So I'm going to click on New Mail at the top left-hand corner here. And in the to box, well, first of all, let me show you how you'd search for an individual. Let's say I wanted to find Jim Cash, the ITRT who's present with me tonight. There's a number of ways I could do it. In the to field, I can start typing his name. So Mr. space Cash, and I could click Search Contacts and Directory. And there he is here. There's actually two Mr. Cash. Oh, that's your test account, isn't it, Jim? Yeah. OK. So I could select him here, and again, he'd be available. If I wanted to select search for everyone in CSIS, I can just type the location name in and click Search Contacts and Directory, and everyone in CSIS comes up. So again, that would work from a school perspective as well. If you typed in a school name, all teachers at a school would show up. And again, combinations of that work as well. If I typed in CSIS and Cash and hit search, the only one who comes up is Jim, because he's the only Mr. Cash who works for CSIS. So on to distribution lists. Let's say, for example, I'm a French teacher at Castlebrook Secondary School, and I teach FSF 1DO Section A. I want to communicate with my students in my class. I need to know the formula used for distribution lists, and it's relatively straightforward. All school-based distribution lists start with an S for school, followed by the 4-digit location code for the location. In Castlebrook's case, that's 2692, followed by a dash, followed by the course and section. So just to show you here, I've typed in S2692-FSF. I'm going to click Search Contacts and Directory, and very, very quickly, I can see all of the French courses taught at Castlebrook. Let's say, for example, I teach FSF 1DO Section A. I can select it. It says basically there are 27 people in that class, and if I double-click on that list, it does show me the individuals who belong to that course and section. So very quickly and easily, a teacher in the system can email everyone in their course and section. And these distribution lists are not only used for email, but they're also used to give permissions later on in the environment. So I introduce you to them here because you're going to be using them quite often as we move through the Office 365 environment. The other thing I want to mention before we move away from Outlook is the idea of this little teeny green square here. This is my presence indicator, and it shows green because I'm currently online and using the system. Underneath Office 365 is a really powerful presence engine called Link. And Link can be used not only for instant messaging, but can also be used for video conferencing, and I'll show that at the very end of the demo. If a teacher doesn't want to be online or shown their presence, relatively straightforward. You come up to your display name at the top and you click it, and you can see I can mark myself as busy, do not disturb, be right back, appear aware. I can sign completely out of instant messaging. But while you're in the first 3 tabs, you'll see the whole point of presence within the environment. So people will either be green or yellow or red based on what they're doing, or they'll be gray if they don't have no presence at all if they're not logged onto the system. So now I want to move across to the calendar tab. Excuse me. Oh. So the calendar tab, much like you'd have in a corporate email environment, the calendar is your personal calendar in the Office 365 environment. And much like email, it doesn't replace your corporate calendar. It simply is the calendar you would use for collaboration in this environment with the teacher-student collaboration piece. So one use case for an elementary teacher is you could very easily use this personal calendar and put in all of your test dates for a specific homeroom that you teach. Because one thing you'll notice that's in this calendar, which isn't in your corporate calendar, is the share button. So as an elementary homeroom teacher, what I can do is I can go ahead and put all my assignments and test dates and everything else. I can then click the share button, and I can use that distribution list I talked about earlier. And I can share my calendar out with every single student in my homeroom. All the students would get an email in their Office 365 account saying, Mr. Larson wants to share his calendar with you. If they click yes, my calendar gets overlaid on top of their calendar. So again, one use case of how you could potentially use the share button. It may not work that well in secondary if you're a teacher who teaches multiple courses and sections, because again, it might get a bit messed up, but you can certainly give that a try. The other possibility that I've heard being suggested to me is you could also have all the students in your class share their calendar with you. But again, if you're in secondary and teach 90 kids, you're going to have a very, very busy calendar if you choose to follow everyone in your class as far as what's shared. One last thing I'm going to do on the calendar really quickly is I'm going to put in a new event, because at the very end of this demonstration, we are going to do a bit of a link test. So I'm going to say, we'll call this, I'll call it link demo, I guess. So I'll type it link demo. I'm going to use the distribution list for all the ITRTs. So again, because they're not a school, they're a department, D0045 ITRT is the distribution list for all the ITRTs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to book myself a 5 o'clock online meeting. And again, this will all come clear to you when we get to the very end. And I'm going to send that invitation out to all the ITRTs. So it's in my calendar now, called 5 p.m. link online demonstration, and more on that later. The next tab I'm going to click on is the People tab. Just like in your corporate email, you have email, calendar, and contacts. So People is your contact screen in Office 365. Relatively straightforward to add people to your contacts. Let's see if I can add someone who's not currently here. Jim, you're not on my contacts. I'll do that now. So if I wanted to add Jim to my contacts, I would search for Mr. Cash. I would find him. There he is. And I would simply click this little button here, and I can say Add to Contacts, and I can save it. I can put more information about him if I wish. But the nice thing about adding someone to your contacts is you can see, number one, you can immediately see presence of people. So Mr. Cash is currently available. And from this screen, I can send him an email, I can invite him to a meeting, or I can instant message him right from this window. So nice, convenient place for existing Office 365 users. You can also use the contacts area to house external contacts. So again, if you're in a classroom and students are doing a pen pal with someone, somewhere else in the world, they can certainly put that contact information in the people area as well. So, moving on to what I think is the most exciting part of the demonstration, and that's the newsfeed section.